You can't have 25 superstars. There's just not enough to go around. Is LeBron James the best player in the world right now? He's not. We are like talent whores. To be your brother's keeper, sometimes you may lose something. Really great teams are willing to embrace personal loss for collective gain.
Welcome back to another episode of the New Rules Podcast. It's your girl, Breezy. How are you doing today, Mr. Crawford?
I am doing well. I'm excited to talk about our topic today.
Yeah, so today in our Staff Culture Creators, we talk through the 7 things you learned from the USA men's basketball team. Very Miley Cyrus of you.
Very Miley Cyrus, even though I don't know what that was until you and Lauren just started singing. So,
7 things. It's
there
about
we go.
her and
White
Nick
girl,
Jonas.
that's what I'm saying. White girl power gets together. Boy, talk about Miley Cyrus or Taylor Swift. It's like the worlds unite. So, but yeah, 7 things I learned because, as we're recording this past Saturday, we got a chance to watch USA basketball win a gold medal. In the last 2.5 minutes of the game, I'm watching it, and I'm sitting there with my son. We're up there, we're watching it. And if you didn't get a chance to see it, I encourage you to go back and look at it. But it was one of the most epic moments I've seen in like basketball. I've been around basketball my entire life, and it was one of the greatest moments I saw in basketball. And I was getting incredibly emotional watching it. And there was a lot of different reasons why I was getting emotional. One, Steph, LeBron, Kevin Durant. Probably the last time you'll see them together, like on a team at that competitive level.
Let me stop. You said you're getting emotional. Today in our Culture Creators, you said you were actually fighting back tears.
Oh, yeah, I was.
Which is a big deal for you to say.
That is
you don't cry.
I don't cry. That is a very big deal for me. I was fighting back tears today. And that's what was strange. I'm like, what am I fighting back tears for watching this? And it was because, again, basketball has meant a lot to me. And watching those guys do it. But I think the biggest thing, as I started diving more into it, I started thinking about just what these guys were trying to accomplish, what they were trying to go after, and just something that was really, I thought was transformational. It was a lot deeper than just basketball, that this actually took place. The stage, the willingness to step up on that stage, the willingness to actually deliver on that stage was such an incredible thing. And so it just made me kind of contemplate what made this group so special. Because I personally believe this is the greatest USA basketball team that's been put together. Now, some people say 1992 Dream Team, 2008 Redeem Team, but actually they're calling themselves the Avengers. And so I think I'm going to definitely go with the 2024, like 24 Avengers Unite.
So the first thing is their willingness to embrace personal loss for collective gain.
It made me start off with Coach Steve Kerr in his statement that he made about Devin Booker. Now, Devin Booker is one of the top, I think, 10 players in the NBA. And one of the things he said when they were interviewing him after winning the gold medal game, he says, I want to mention Devin Booker. No one's really asked about him, but he's been he's our unsung MVP. And what it made me think about, Devin Booker is a scorer. I mean, he really has an elite gift to score the basketball. But on this team, he was willing to do whatever it was taking. He was a guy who, when he had to make open shots, he would. He did a great job defensively. And matter of fact, I think the most important play of that game was a pass he made when Steph Curry makes his third 3, where he could have shot the ball, but he was willing to make the extra pass. And it made me think about as well LeBron. LeBron is one of the greatest scorers. He is the greatest scorer to ever play basketball. And LeBron went to a different role. He was more of a facilitator. Kevin Durant, one of the top 10 guys ever play basketball, was willing to come off the bench into the last game. And what it made me think about is that really great teams are willing to embrace personal loss for collective gain. Because I actually believe in order to be a part of something special, in order to make a dent, you're going to have personal loss. You're going to have to be willing to lose something for the overall, collective gain of everyone. Now, what does that mean? That may mean for you that the role you think you should play, the maybe power you think you should have, maybe the money you think you should make, or the influence you think you should take to take place, that you may not have that, but you have another role that you play that's incredibly important, but you're willing to lose that for something far bigger. And I think that is something that so moves me when people are willing to do that, because I know what it costs. I know what it takes. I know these guys are multimillionaires. These guys are in the top 1% of people in their profession. And they were willing, they have egos, but they were willing to let some of that stuff go in order for something far greater. And I think that is something very special when you get a chance to actually watch it, because when you see it, you get to see magic. You get to see some of the best people willing to take a different role in order for the collective gain. And I think really transformational teams, but also real transformational leaders are actually willing to do that.
Can you share a story about a time that you've embraced it?
It's a good question. I would say that Yeah. I would say like right now, there's part of it because, something that, that we've been able to start here is Equal Shot Training and Academy. And so actually the other day, a former teammate of mine who actually is working with Equal Shot had no idea that I was the one who started Equal Shot and that I'm involved, with helping shape a lot of stuff that goes on with it. Because JT, who's kind of really the person who's our day-to-day, really pretty much the CEO of Equal Shot, he's the one that everybody sees. He's the face. And the truth is like, I have an ego like everyone else. I like to be seen and I'll be honest with you, people to see that I actually have done some things. And so the fact of the matter, I think the best thing for Equal Shot is for JT to be the face. Even though I started, I put time, energy, money, whatever behind it, I think it's what's made it better. And here's the God honest truth about it. Though I want to have personal shine, I actually believe in the collective gain. And the best thing for Equal Shot is for JT to actually be the face. And so that's something right now, though it may not seem big, it is a thing for me. Because again, like anybody else, when you've done something, you've helped create, because Equal Shots is doing some really cool stuff, you actually want to get credit for some of those things. But I actually believe part of my work is to actually help create spaces and opportunities for others so that they can get their shine. And that's a hard thing sometimes, because you know what that means? They get shine and sometimes you don't. People won't even know that you're actually a part of something. But I think that it's not about, when you really think about the collective gain, is the impact that actually Equal Shot is actually making within the community that we're in. And that's the point. The point is for it to make the impact that we set out for it to do, and it's actually doing that.
The second principle is the work works. Now, this is a little bit of internal language that we use here. It's actually what we would call a team commandment for us at New Rules Collective. So can you define a little bit about what we mean by the work works, and then also how they embrace this principle?
Yeah, the idea of the work works is this kind of daily commitment to just showing up and just doing whether if it's the daily task, executing on your skill set. It's just every single day that you're willing to be committed to whatever the work that's in front of you. And that if you stay committed to it, that it actually works. It may not work on the first day, the second day, the third day, fourth or fifth day. By day 10, by day 15, by day 20, the work actually works. And when I thought about this, I thought about Steph Curry. Steph Curry did not play great almost the entire Olympics until the last two games. But the one thing that Steph Curry is known for is his unbelievable work ethic. And even though he wasn't shooting great, the same way that he approaches his pregame, the same way he approaches postgame, the way he approaches shooting before practice, after practice, all the stuff, he kept doing it because the work works. Even though, the three-point line was a little bit closer, they're playing with a different type of basketball, all those things matter. But he just kept working at it, and eventually, when the team needed the most, I think it was maybe he had 9 threes one game, 7 threes the other game, and he had one of the most epic runs that you've ever seen in basketball the last 2 minutes of that last game. And you could see that from a lot of different players, that they were willing to just day in, day out come in and stick with it. The other thing about the work works is that they got down by 17 points in the semifinal game. And if you watch it, there's a clip of Steph Curry. They're down 17, and he's in the huddle. And right before they're about to put him in, he's kind of over there dancing, just carefree. I'm they're down 17. If they lose this game, everybody in America is going to think they're the worst team ever because they expect us to win gold every year. But you saw these guys, they were not rattled at all. They were all just calm. They kept doing the same thing over and over again because they knew eventually that the work was going to work. And so it's just one of those things, I think, when people, your day-to-day grind, you may not feel like you're making impact, right? You're in there, you're man, every day I kind of come in, I'm looking at this budget. Every day I come in, man, I'm having these conversations. I have these check-ins. I have the same kind of protocol I have to do. I'm reading, I'm studying, whatever it is, trying to get better. And you may not see the results, but what I do know is this: I just believe in the principle that it's one of the great proverbs that all hard work leads to profit. I believe that if you do the work and you work at it consistently, the right work, that it ultimately always pays off.
Another way to say the work works is trust the process. Yeah. When you find yourself not trusting the process, what do you do?
I think when I'm not trusting the process, I'm always trying to be curious of why I'm not. Because sometimes, there may be the reality that, man, some of the stuff I'm doing may not be, the right work. So you want to be curious about that. The other thing I realized when I stopped trusting the process, it's because it usually comes from an unhealthy place because I'm trying to get something. Maybe I'm not getting the shine the revenue, I'm not getting the accolades or whatever it may be that I think I should have because of what I'm doing. And so when I get out of sorts sometimes and not trusting the process, it's because I'm not getting a result and the timing that I want. I can work hard. I can't determine timing of certain things. My job is just to take what's in my hands, be incredibly faithful with it, and then let it deliver from there.
What do you think was going on in Steph's mind when he wasn't playing his best? And how do you think he altered his thought process in order to show up?
From the people who I know that knows him, they said he has this like weird kind of crazy ability to just like stuff doesn't really rattle him. It's kind of like sometimes, in a sense, it's not that he's aloof, but he can be aloof like when he plays. Like it's just kind of like, yeah, you just know, like it's just, I think his mind can become so free because of this. He's done it so much and he's seen the results of it. He's gone on games where, and streaks to where he hasn't shot the ball well. And then he's gone that, man, he may have had 3-4 games, didn't play well, and then he goes on some legendary run. He's had games where he missed his first maybe 8 or 9 shots, and then he goes on a legendary run. But because he's put all the time and effort, and when you've done that enough times, here's what I think. I think you have a confidence because you know eventually it's going to come around. You know eventually that if I keep doing what I'm going to do, it's going to come around because I've seen the results happen. I just think most people won't stick to something long enough. They stop short. They don't put the hours in. And so then what happens when those moments come, of course they're going to doubt it because they've never spent enough time doing it over and over and over again. I'm telling you, somebody who's communicated for the last 20 years. And honestly, to the last 2 or 3 years, have I felt comfortable realizing, and there's still moments where like I'm going to have to get on the stage and communicate where I'm like, and maybe it's the week before or a couple weeks out, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to be able to say. And literally, I've done this so much, done the process. It really hit me a couple years ago. Like, it's never been a moment where I've not gotten on there and something has been able to be delivered. Mm-hmm. Maybe at times it's some of the best stuff. Sometimes maybe not be there. It's never been like, oh my gosh, that was a bomb, because I've just constantly still done the work. And so when I step on a stage now, I know that something's going to happen because there's just the work that actually goes into it. And I think that thing just gets delivered. And I can go on and on about other things. I was thinking about that today. You know, we had a conversation about kind of where one of our companies is at financially. And the natural place I go to is like, I freak out. I'm like, okay, all right, I got to go do this. I got to go do this. What about this? Okay, man. Then I start going to like worst case scenarios. And I'm literally sitting there and I start thinking about, I'm like, how many times have I been through this in my 20 years? I'm like, a lot. Mm-hmm. And you know what happens? Keep doing what we need to do, learn from what we need to do better, and just keep moving on. And it's always worked out. And so I was able to actually like lock myself in and realize, no, we're doing what we need to do. The work works, and the delivery always happens on the other side.
Mm-hmm. I feel like the work works actually really segues well into our third principle, which is being present in the moment. It seems like practice and embracing the work is what allows you to be a non-anxious presence whenever things start to not go your way, so that you can actually be present in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that, like going to what I was saying earlier, those guys were just in it. I mean, you got to think about this. You're playing in Paris against the French national team. 19.5 million viewers watched that game. You're playing for a gold medal. And, you know, and all these things that come along with it. Last year, the team lost in the world, not this team, but a different team lost in the world championships. There's a lot that goes into it. It's the last big event of really the Olympics, and everyone's there, especially. So you're in enemy territory playing against them, all that. And you just watch those guys. They were just there. And LeBron is probably one of the best. He always gives the team what they need in that moment. Sometimes LeBron, he knew Steph was going, so he was working, and they were all working to get Steph the ball. He needed to go rebound the ball. He rebounded the ball. He needed to go get a tough basket. He went and got a tough basket. He just has the ability, but being present in the moment, you're actually able to give, your organization, your team, whatever, what they need. And if you're not aware, then what you'll give them is just what you think or what you want to give them versus giving them what they need. And a lot of times what we give people is out of our own fears, out of our own insecurities, out of our own like selfish ambition versus giving the organizations we work for actually exactly what they need. And so you have to learn how to be present in the moment, but that takes a lot of discipline because fear, anxiety, Worry, doubt, selfish ambition will cause you to live in the future and make decisions there versus making decisions on actually what's needed in the moment. And so that takes an actual practice to actually be calm and actually live in that moment.
So when you're under moments of pressure, maybe that be there's millions of dollars on the line, maybe it be relational stress.
Yep.
What do you practice in order to remain present, to not live in the past and to not speed yourself up?
I think I try to ask the question of, like, what am I trying to accomplish right here? Like, what am I trying to accomplish, and what do I need to bring? What is needed? So even if things aren't going the right way, it allows me to sit there and say, okay, why is it not going the right way? Okay, what needs to help to fix this? Is this just part of the process? You know what I mean? When you're working through something, sometimes there's ups, sometimes there's downs. Are we just in a down moment right now, but in a few days it's going to be an up moment? Do we have the right people on the team? Now, the right team, are the right people doing the right work? It allows you just to evaluate really well and then make a conscious decision. But then that goes into what you're saying, that the work works. Is because of when you've constantly worked on things and you have that in your tool belt, you're able to deliver because you have it in your tool belt. Versus it being something you're like, oh crap, I've never done this before. Even if you don't have that skill set, you have then something to where you can add. Like, for example, right now, as we're trying to develop, grow, enhance our company, I've just hired someone to really help us. Well, here's how that came about. This person is incredibly, well-versed, incredibly talented, have helped tons of companies go from one, like they've 5X their stuff. Amazing guy. Well, I did not know, how do we get to this point? How do we get to this level? Well, here's what I've done for 20 years. Here's one thing about the work works. I've worked very hard with relationships. I've worked very hard to have good relationships. So what I was able to do when we start talking through this, I was able to think about, I thought about one person. I called that one person. That one person, I knew he's my plug. He literally is. He's my plug to anything that I need. Shout out to my man, Jake. So he helps me get whatever I need when it comes to business, when it comes to whatever. I did was I literally was like, let me call Jake. And then in one moment, because me and Jake have such a good relationship, without a doubt, he's like, oh, I got this. This is who I think you should call. And then here's what I think I should call. So then he calls him on my behalf. This person was willing to do that because Jake was the one who called. I didn't have a relationship with this person. This person was able to meet with me and love what we were doing, was willing to take us on. And it was because of the fact that the work works in that moment, I was able to look and see what we needed. And here's what I had to come to reality. Where we're trying to go, I don't have the skill set to get to that level. I've not scaled a company to the level of where we're trying to go. So I had to go find somebody. But because I've worked on having good relationships, it allowed me to be able to find the right thing to fit right there.
Wow, what a beautiful segue to the fourth one, which is it's not about having the best players, but the right players. Yeah. You did incredible at that. You didn't even know that was the next one.
I didn't. And that was one of my favorite parts of this team. Because everyone kept saying this. There's a guy named Derek White who got put on the team late. And they took him over a guy named Jaylen Brown, who Jaylen Brown was the NBA Finals MVP. And it was a big to-do. But Derek White was the right fit. A guy named Drew Holiday was the right fit. Bam Adebayo was the right fit. These were all guys who were like unsung. They weren't like the most talented. There were probably more talented guys in the NBA. But they were willing. They had specific skill sets. Derek White, great defender, knockdown shooter. Drew Holiday, probably the best on-ball defender in all the NBA. Bam Adebayo can guard 1 through 5. Again, for you, but basketball, he can guard point guard, he can guard any position. Guys like that were the right fits. They already had enough scores and superstars. They needed the right fit. They needed the right guys who could play a specific role. I think that when you're building a team, you're working on a team, what we tend to do is we actually are so, I like to say it this way. Many times we are like talent whores. Like we just want talent. Like we're like, we'll sell anything to get talent. Now I believe in talent, but here's the thing. You can't have 25 like superstars. There's just not enough to go around. You've got to have the right superstars who are coachable, and then you got to have people who are willing to play or have a specific skill set, and they're willing to play that role. And I think that's what I've seen with great teams, not just in basketball, but in companies and nonprofits, people who have the right fit. They may not have the best players, but they have everyone who's willing to fit into the mission and goal they're trying to accomplish. And the way you have to do that, you got to know what you're trying to accomplish. You got to know what you're going to need. You got to know, man, I'm entering into this market. to enter into this market, we're going to have this skill set. Okay, great. We're into this market, man, we don't have this skill set on the team. Okay, let's go add that person to our team. And that person may not be the most talented person. That's the other thing. Sometimes as you're moving in your organization or you're moving up and growing in leadership, there are certain people who may have played a role of leadership at a high level that may not be able to play that same role of leadership as you go to that next level because there's a different skill set that's needed. And so that's another thing. Are you willing to then put the right person in there and not stick with that? And I think that is a really difficult thing in leadership, but you got to have the right fit, not just only have the most talented people.
Question on something you mentioned, and then we'll come back to what you just said. You mentioned being seduced by talent. Mm-hmm. That's one extreme. Another extreme is being threatened by it. Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah,
it's a great one. I think, sometimes like people can be threatened by, you want to be the smartest person in the room. There was somebody who I was working with, and they had immense amount of talent, but what hindered them, they were threatened by other talented people. They had to be in the room as the smartest person. And I remember hearing this so many times. If you're ever in the room and you're always in the room where you're always the smartest person, then you should be worried, because you need to have people who in other areas are more talented than you, who have more wisdom than you do. And I think a lot of times that can hinder people. That can hinder organizations, because people really do get threatened by other talent. Because here's the thing, if somebody else, because then we start worrying, what if everybody thinks they're better than I am? Then what does that look like for me? What influence do I have? What does that person do? Will they take my job one day? And we all live in this fear. And so let me tell you, when you live and lead out of a place of fear, you're going to lose it anyway. And so that's why I tell you can't be threatened by talent. You got to be secure in who you are. And let me tell you, when you're out there playing, like LeBron James is arguably the greatest player to ever play basketball. Right now, is LeBron James the best player in the world? Right now, he's not. Is LeBron James, he could have went out there and went on this is my farewell tour. I'm about to do my own thing, whatever. No, he was willing to defer to all different guys. I tell people, Steph Curry shot the last shot of the game. That was the craziest shot ever. And let me tell you this, never in the history would you allow, he had Kevin Durant wide open, LeBron James. Number probably one of the 1A or 1B, and then you had Kevin Durant top 10. They were wide open. He still shot it. And LeBron was totally fine with that. And so my whole point was that because he's not threatened by it. He knows his talent, and he was not threatened. He also knows, man, he's lost his step, but he's still really good, and he played his role. So I think he can't be threatened by talent.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you differentiate best from right? Because you talked a little bit about the right person holding the competencies that you need. But I feel like there's two other pillars that we utilize within our context, which is also character and culture.
Yeah. I think, And so we have three things. So if I'm looking at our organization, it's character, culture, and competency. And so the right fit for me and the right fit for us is always that it's not just about competency, but sometimes like somebody may have their competency may not be at the highest level of a person, but they've got incredible character. And what I mean by character is this. I mean, their work ethic, their ability to want to sacrifice, their ability to, they're willing to do, they're willing to do whatever it takes. I mean, they're dependable, things like that. When you look at culture, do they fit who we are? Are they willing to be those who empower people? They fit our values that we actually have as an organization. I will take, if I've got those two things, but with a lesser competency, I will take that all day long over somebody with a higher competency and lowering those two things. Right. Because the competency level they can grow in. But the one thing about it, building something, culture and character are incredibly important. It's not only what you make, but it's how and why you make it. And I think if you don't have great character and culture within you, or a character and culture, then I think what you'll deliver won't be at the fullest or the best impact because of why you made it.
So the next one is that they became their brother's keeper.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite ones because Joel Embiid, who played for the 76ers, Joel was, he is from Cameroon, if I'm not mistaken, but also has like a French passport. So for a lot of the time, everybody thought he was going to play for the French national team, who they were playing against. So now the entire tournament, whenever Joel, because they thought he was going to play for the French national team, ended up playing for the U.S. team, he was in France. They booed him every time. Every time he caught the ball, they just booed him. Okay, so the French fans, they're salty. They don't like him, whatever. But Joel is kind of one of those guys where he likes to be the villain. So all of a sudden they're booing him, and he, if you're not able to hear this, not able to see this for those on the podcast, he's got his hands up like this. He's like inviting it in. And so the team, what they did was this. Because Joel's got some arrogance about him. Joel came in at least, like he wasn't in great shape when he came in. So those guys could have been like, yo, we're not about to back this dude. You ain't coming in shape. People like us. You're turning us into villains as well. We're not going to do that. But those guys, and they said it, they're like, man, when you get to know him, he's just different. But here's the thing, regardless of knowing him in public and when they were in battle, they backed him. So they all were doing it. So whenever Joel would score and people would boo, the whole team would just do their hands. And even at the award ceremony, it's one of the funniest things at the award ceremony, he's getting his gold medal. And the crowd, kind of in jest whatever, starts booing him. And the whole team does the same thing, like trying, keep booing us, whatever. And what they did, though, is they were willing to go to bat. I think great teams, great organizations, they are their brother's keeper. They realize they have a responsibility for those who are around them. Now, there's a difference between codependency, and actual and being your brother's keeper. Because sometimes we'll be our brother's keeper, and it's not because we really care for them. We just care. We need to be needed, so we'll do that. But actually, great people, they're willing to go to bat for people, even if it may cause them to lose something. Even if somebody may, you back them? Oh, are you that way? I see that all the time where people will make those statements. And again, to be your brother's keeper, sometimes you may lose something. You may lose a little credibility in people's eyes to back your brother. I just think it's incredibly important. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about something moral. I'm not talking about someone doing something that's unethical, but I'm actually talking about there may be a person who works in your team who may be a little bit arrogant. They got a little bit of stuff about them. And you know what? And people may not like that. Well, here's the thing. You may start to realize you talk to them, that edge is what makes them really good, and you need that. And you're willing to go to war and bat for them. And I just think that's a hard thing in today's world because we're so consumed with how we look that we're not willing to fight for someone. I told a story earlier. I had one of my good friends to where, man, he's incredibly talented. He rocks the boat. He pushes the edges. I've said super hard stuff to him behind closed doors. But let me tell you this. I'll go to war with him no matter what. Because I know him. I'm not talking about he doesn't do anything that's like wrong or illegal or character, whatever. But I watch him, and he has to be who he is for the context that he's in. But I go to war for him, and I'll go to bat for him. And you know what? Sometimes people have put me in a boat of thinking, oh, well, you are okay with this stuff, and they really don't understand. And they have a view of me, but I'm okay with that. Because sometimes you have to be willing to stand up for your friends. You have to be willing to do that. Like one of my other close friends, he's in politics. And people really, they have DM'd me and they're like, oh, I can't believe that, you rock with this dude. Like, I've been rocking with this dude for 25 years. I'm like, you can miss me. I don't care. That's my guy. And you know what? You have no idea the conversations I have with him behind closed doors. Right. But when it comes to public, I'm never going to let you know what I think. But you know what? That's my guy. And he's been my guy through thick, thin. He's been there with me. So why wouldn't I do that? And I think that's something that's really lost in today's culture is people don't really just stand like 2 feet, 10 toes down with people. And we're not, and again, because we all get, well, what if they're doing something illegal? We're not talking about that. You're an idiot if you back stuff like that. I'm just talking about just being a friend as your person or your teammate or your coworker is working through their process. Because let me tell you this, how many times do you work through a process where you haven't been your best and someone's stuck with you? We want people to stick with us through our process, but we want everyone to arrive at perfection. We only rock with them if they arrive at perfection. And I think that is why people lack great friendships, great relationships. And that is why when things get tough, they have no one there for them because they're not willing to take a hit for somebody. And I just think that's one of the things I saw. That was amazing.
Do you have any stories about a time that somebody disagreed with you but still embraced you publicly and it impacted you?
Oh, yeah. One of the things that's unfortunate about being, one of the things that I do being in the church world, like, unfortunately at times, and again, I'm not one of those people, like, the church is the worst. Like, no. Yeah. The church is phenomenal. Like, I love God's church. But the church can be very judgmental and people have a lot of opinions. And, I lead our church with a group of elders. Like, there's a core group of us who help lead. And there are times where I've made decisions. There's times where I've said things to where they've backed it. They trust, even though behind closed doors, we wrestle with it. But at the end, what happened was that, they understand the process we go through. But if at the end of the day, I was like, guys, I really feel this way. Normally, I don't make usually I don't make a call unless we're all on the same board. And that's how we normally get there. But there was a couple times where I had to make a call and they backed, even though a couple of them didn't agree with it. But no one had any idea, and they never will know if they did or not. And to me, that means the world to me, because they're actually willing to stand there and fight and go to war. And go into battle with me. And so it's really, those guys, that's why I love them. They've always been that. And it's been really cool.
The next one is they understood the times.
Yeah, it's the idea that, like, in each part and season of life, sometimes your gifts will be prominent. Sometimes they'll take a back seat. And if you don't understand the times, you will always think your gift, your skill set should be the one on Front Street, when it was always on Front Street. When it was always the thing that people saw was that. And what they were able to do was that they understood the times of what was needed and what skill sets, what players need to come on Front Street. You know what I mean? Like, there was a player where, it was hilarious, Tyrese Halliburton, who plays for him. And Tyrese Halliburton's, again, the guy's an all-star, didn't play the last 2 or 3 games. But you watch him on the bench, that dude was he was the greatest teammate, whatever. And this is a dude who probably, I think Tyrese Halliburton's contract, he's a $200 million person. He's like one of the top 15, 20 players in the world. And just watching him. But he understood that he had a part to play, but he also knew that, man, there were going to be other times where other guys were going to be better than he was in those moments. And so it worked out for them, and it was great. They understood the times. But it was actually funny because at the end, he has this picture that he posted on. He's a funny dude on Instagram or Twitter, and he's holding up his gold medal, and they literally said it was like, when you did nothing on the group project, but you still get an A. And I was like, yo, that's amazing that he was willing to, tell a joke like that. Mm-hmm. And I think that, and this is
that requires such a sense of security.
It does, because you're like, listen, I don't think people get this. These men are the best at what they do. They're in the top 1%. Most of us are not in the top 1% of what we do, or the top 5% of what we do, or 10%, maybe at best. But most people, we're in the 50s, right? They're in the best. We have ego. Somebody has an ego, and their willingness to sacrifice it. That's the most amazing thing for me, because there were some guys who actually didn't get there, and you saw their attitude about it. Not everybody on that team was willing to embrace that, but there's most of the guys who are willing to do it. Even at the end of the game, when you watch Steph Curry go, I watch things like this all the time watching basketball. I see how connected the team is by watching the bench. And when Steph Curry was on that run, every last one of those guys knew it was about a gold medal. They all were off the bench. They all were going crazy, whatever. My point is this. In every season of your life, the skill you use or the thing you did was, it may not be needed. There's a late, great preacher named Miles Monroe, and a video came across my Instagram feed, I think, TikTok, one of them, and he talked about the idea of, there's this famous story in the Bible of Samson, and it tells about, Samson had all his great strength, and it said that Samson ended up going to battle with, I think it was with the Philistines, and it said literally saw a jawbone of a donkey, right? So saw the jawbone, and then ended up just destroying 1,000 men. So can you imagine that jawbone of a donkey, blood everywhere, whatever? And what he said was when something as a tool works like that, then what do? We package it, we reproduce it. All of a sudden now, all people probably were
we all have jawbones.
Yeah, all of a sudden people, oh man, if you want to fight and stop 1,000 people, buy this jawbone. And
get your jawbone here.
That's what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? Go over to,
Toys R Us.
Yeah, go to Hobby Lobby. You know what I'm saying? Right next to your Live, Laugh, Love.
Build your own jawbone.
Yeah, Home Depot, and just and so they would have gone and done that. But what it said was that the most important line it said was that he left the jawbone there, because it was so powerful, is because he was saying that for what the assignment was, that was what was needed. But for the next assignment, it wasn't. So he left it there. And what we try to do is carry those things. And that's a really hard thing for a leader, especially when you've been really good at something. When you've been really good and you've gotten shine, but maybe you're entering into a new season, your organization's entering into a new season, and what you did, that's your greatest gift, may not be what's the upfront thing that's needed right now. What do you do? because what we end up doing is we become married to methods versus just actual results. And so I think that's one of the things they understood at times, and they were willing to bring the right skill sets forward when they needed to.
That's incredibly wise. We talked about the person with ego. What about the person who always takes a backseat because they feel insecure? And what if they could be in the top 5%, 10%?
What hinders people like that is their obsession with being liked. They don't want to put themselves on Front Street because what if they fail? And if I fail, what would they say about me? What do people think about me? And that, how people view them, is more important than accomplishing something. And I get that. That's sometimes how I've been, to where I will feel something, sense something, and don't want to do it because, man, what if I'm wrong? What if I can't deliver? What would that look like? And it became, and it was more about, I cared way more about what people thought about me than actually what we were trying to accomplish. And that's some of the things I regret in my life, that sometimes I allowed my obsession with people liking me to get in the way of me, like of not being passionate to deliver on something that could have helped a lot of people. And so I think what you have to realize is that you have to get out of the side of yourself, and you have to speak for what it is. I think so many times we're like, we justify stuff like that. People, especially in today's current environment, they're seen as, oh, they're the humble ones. They're not. It drives me crazy when people say that. They're not humble. They are as prideful as Kanye West. It just manifests itself differently. It's just, you don't get outside of yourself, and you have to think about there's something greater than you. If you are at the end of the rainbow, you'll never get outside of your own self, and you're not willing to step up. And I think that's super important for people to be willing to do that.
Sometimes socially and culturally right now, we view people who have a healthy sense of self as egotistical, especially if they're in positions of power. What's your take on that?
Yeah, and I get how we got there. I think people there's a couple things. One, people have abused power. People were arrogant and they abused power, and what that allowed them to do, they thought because they were gifted at something, they could just do whatever. And so that's a real thing. I get the environment there. I think the other thing is that we've lost the ability to ask questions. It's so easy to just say, oh, this person's this way. You know what I mean? Like I joke with you and Lauren, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh yeah, white women. I have all these thoughts about you guys, but I'm like, but I have to, ask a question. They could look at, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I know.
When you said 7 things, what did you mean by that?
What do you mean when I said so?
When I was referencing Miley Cyrus, you asked the question, what's that? I don't know what that is.
I didn't know what 7 things were. So like, for
just
example. But here's what happens. If I'm sitting there with like Lauren, and I could just look at Lauren and just say, okay, there's a 20-some-year-old white girl who comes from a Christian home. I can have all these opinions about Lauren, all these thoughts about her. But like when you actually ask her clarifying questions, you're like, oh, like justice matters to Lauren. You know what I'm saying? Caring for those like who are in need matters to Lauren. Like, beauty and art matter to Lauren. And I could have all these opinions simply by just like looking at her. And I think that's what we do with people who have any bit of like healthy sense of self. We just think they're arrogant, because here's what happens. People actually are threatened by them because they're just secure in what they want to do. And in a day where we lack leaders, people, because when you step up to lead and you really do it, it shines a light on you. And what we want to do is pull everybody back so we all seem the same. No. Like if you see somebody out there, man, let that person shine, because that person who's shining may create ways for you to move forward. But I think so many times today we're limiting leaders because we make people who have a healthy sense of self or who actually want to lead, we see them as like negative. And I think that's stopping people from stepping up and leading.
Which goes to our 7th, last one, best one. They accepted being led.
Yeah, I mean, they are the best. But when you watch their reaction and their response to their coach, Steve Kerr, they were willing to be led by him. I guarantee you there's times where they maybe doubted his rotations and his subs. They may have doubted the play he was calling, who they were running it for. But, I watched guys like Kevin Durant, and I watched Bam, and I watched, Drew Holiday and even Steph and whoever. When they would come out the game, you never saw them complaining, frustrated, I should be in the game. I mean, even like in the gold medal game, it was 3.5 minutes left, and LeBron James was in really good shape. He took LeBron out for like a minute just to give him a quick break. Like you would think LeBron, but I can suck it up for 3 minutes. But you watch him. He didn't say anything. He went to the bench. He knew he was going to get back in, but he was willing. They trusted him. And I think that is an incredible thing for leaders, for individuals, for teams. You have to have a desire to be led. And that's a really hard thing today. We live in an era of where people want to create anarchy. They don't want leadership. But anything that's moved the world, there's been strong point leadership. Just go look at it. It's not it's not the committees of we. It's not. There's a point leader who's willing to lead. Now, great point leaders actually do it with other people. They're willing to defer. They're willing to empower. But you got to be willing to trust and be willing to be led. And at some point, somebody's going to lead you, but you got to be willing to trust. And I think that's where a lot of hindrances can happen in people's development nowadays, is because they don't want to be led. As soon as they feel something is hard, difficult, what they view as, not healthy, toxic, whatever, people tap out. And it may not. We're not talking about an abusive relationship. We're not talking about anything like that. We're talking about just sometimes, you may work for a boss who's very demanding. You may work for a boss who at times raises his voice. You may work for a boss at times who, he has expectation of perfection. You may work for a boss who doesn't, when it comes to mistakes, he doesn't want that many mistakes. You may work for someone like that. And here's the truth about it. If you embrace that, what if that helps you get better? I just had this conversation with somebody. Some of the greatest lessons I've learned in leadership were led, honestly, not under great leadership, because I saw what not to do. But I also learned some really good things from some really good leaders who at times, because I naturally don't want you to lead me. Even though I'm a coach's kid, I like to do things alone. That's why I start everything and whatever. But I'm telling you, some of the greatest things is willing to be led. And when you're willing to be led, I think you can make incredible breakthrough.
Whenever you're under poor leadership, it seems like one of the biggest challenges can be the view that you should be the person leading because you're better than the person who's leading you.
Yep.
Can you tell a story about a time where you've had to navigate that and the emotions and the inner turmoil that can come with why does this person have this opportunity and why don't I? And then on top of that, I'm also supposed to submit to this person's authority when I fundamentally disagree with them.
Yeah. I work for somebody that, as time went on, fundamentally as a leader, I was just, in skill set, ability, whatever, probably was a better leader than they were. But one thing an old mentor of mine said is that, how you follow is how people will follow you. And it just stuck with me. How you follow is how people will follow you. And he told me, because I was struggling. I was like, this community, this just sucks. I feel like, we're stuck. We can't do this. We can't do this. And blah, 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 blah. And his whole thing was are you guys better because you're there? If you're so good, then really good leaders make things better, even if the person leading, they make them look good. And that stuck with me. And what it taught me was that, because one, it keeps you in a humble state. Because you know what? Eventually I've realized, I work with incredibly talented people, all you guys. You're very talented. At your age and the ability of what you have was maybe farther along than I was. The thing about it, though, is that when at some point you're going to lead somebody who, maybe be a little bit more, that they're more talented than you. And what you want is the same way you would want them to help you look great and be great, is the same way I wanted to do that. And so that's just what my thing was about. How do I actually make this person great? How do I actually bring real honor to that person? And I think that goes back to the reality that when you're looking at somebody, that, every person that you look at, they're not just normal, right? They're really image bearers. They're actually there's a part of the divine in each human being. And I think in that, you need to treat them that way. Even if they don't deserve it in their leadership or whatever, you should try to make them great, because all it's going to do is make you better as well.
Okay, so now that we've gone through all 7, which do you believe that you embody best, and where do you need to grow? And don't use Uno reverse it.
I asked you to do it.
Why don't you tell me what you think I do best?
I was getting ready to Uno reverse that thing quick.
The way he said, "Why don't you?"
Yeah.
I can answer, but I also I enjoy. And I think listeners enjoy hearing you talk through the process of it too.
I actually probably would say what I do really well is willingness of personal loss for collective gain. And I think what I need to be better at is being present in the moment. probably be my 2.
Nice.
What would you say?
I would say that you do pretty well at each of these. I think the one that I value most about you is brother's keeper. I think how you embody it, and I have the luxury of proximity, so I get to see the ways that you embody it in friendship, the ways that you embody it with those that you lead. But what I mostly value is how much this is the hardest one for people to embody overall, I think, and you really challenge us to do that. Like when there are times where we're making a decision and we all disagree, or you can tell there's like 1 or 2 people that are just like not with it, and we're sitting in the room, you're like, okay, we're not leaving until everybody commits to saying like, this is the decision that we landed on, for better, for worse, and when we walk out of this room, we're all going to act like we made this decision together, because it's the best thing for the team and the best thing for the organization. So I really value how you embodied that one. And then I'd say the one to grow in, I would say being present in the moment, but not because like you're by no means in the negative in that. I think there's a reason why our theme this year is parallel presence, and it's because last year that was something that you realized like that's what I really need to work on. And what I value about you is being a one trial learner. Like once you start to focus on something, you really start to embody it, and then once you embody it, a year later, you're still going to embody it. It's not like, oh, I did that for 1 year while that was the focus, and then I suddenly forgot about it. So it's been really cool to see the ways that you've actually really focused on it and began to work on it, and because of it, you've changed.
I appreciate that. No, it is, and it's just funny because even with that, the idea of like being in the moment, it's like one of the things I was practicing a ton was just like silence, solitude, kind of doing that, and I kind of like things started to get busy. I kind of got away from it. And it's like interesting. The last like 2 or 3 weeks, I'm like, okay, no. I really got to get back to this. And so it's amazing just even that practice of sitting there 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever.
Right,
just
but
in silence. And that was helpful.
With implementing those practices, again, sorry I cut you off, but I meant to give this example. When you're talking about the finances, like usually when we would be having that kind of conversation, like within like 5 minutes, it's like, Bri, come here. Like, we need to talk. Like suddenly we got the whiteboard out. We're like doing all this stuff. Like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to get this dollar, which is a good thing. That is a really good thing to do. But not always the best thing for you to do within the moment. And so it was cool to see it, even with just re-implementing those practices, the fruit of like what you've practiced in prior times, because you get the messenger like, okay, like
this is where we're
going to figure this out. We've done it before. We're going to do it again. And I know what the next step is. Yeah,
and it is. It was like, but I mean, again, for about 30 seconds, you're just like, screw that. You're like, I'm cutting everything, this, and you're just like, okay, we've been here before. What do we need to do? And what you also understand is just the ebbs and flows of when you actually run something, but this is just kind of what happens with it. And so, but it's kind of, but the work works. And so go from there. So
to those listening, we want you to think about which of the 7 you embody best, and which of the 7 you need to grow in. And
here's what I say: the one that you embody best, look at and ask yourself, how can I, like, what am I doing that makes me embody that, and keep working on that. And for the one thing you want to get better, you pick one. And for the one that you want to get better in, that you're actually willing to say, what's the next practical step that you can say, I can do it like tomorrow, I can do it tonight, I can do whatever, that will take me in that direction, and just start taking one step at a time toward that. So guys, hey, I hope today was helpful. I hope that, man, you can actually learn. Again, a lot of times, like, taking moments like this to evaluate what we see in culture, there's something so much deeper behind it, though we all loved it and who watched it was entertaining. But I love being able to see something and then going behind the scene to get a lot more deeper insight into it. So until next time, keep writing new rules.